Hello and welcome to the Trust and Influence in B2B podcast. I'm your host, Joel Harrison. As the title suggests, this podcast is a broad remit covering the evolving challenges associated with generating trust and influencing buyers in all areas of B2B. These are perennially tough challenges, but they've taken on a new urgency and resonance in a changing landscape. Episodes are released weekly, so please don't forget to subscribe and like or rate this episode or podcast. It really means a lot to me for you to tell me what you think and to help support what I'm trying to do with this podcast. So, in this episode, we're going to talk about the evolving balance between physical and digital customer engagement as part of building trust and generating influence. And we're going to explore how evolving buyer expectations may result in B2B brands adopting more radical strategies than we've seen in the past. Now, COVID forced us all to become much more comfortable with digital platforms for all different kinds of content consumption and brand engagement. But as with many things, since the pandemic waned, it seems we've bounced a long way back towards physical events, with both buyer and seller recognizing the value and quality of these offer for human interaction and engagement. One brand that's gone further than most is e-commerce provider Enfuse, which has purchased an actual physical island in the Nordic Sea between Sweden and Finland, describing it as a fully immersive brand experience where customers can have high-impact conversation, but at the same time feel the calmness and serenity that that brand seeks to facilitate through its services. I have to admit, the first time I saw the press release about this initiative, I had to read it a few times to make sure I understood it, check I hadn't gone mad, and check my diary to ensure it wasn't actually April the 1st. So very unique, very interesting, very excited to explore what's happened, why Enfuse have done this, and to explore this and perhaps this unique and perhaps extraordinary initiative in more detail. I'm joined today by Vanessa Schotes. I've just checked I pronounced the name correctly.
That was perfect.
Well, thank goodness we checked in advance. And Vanessa is CMO of Enfuse. Vanessa, welcome.
Thanks so much for having me on your show, Joel.
Well, it's lovely to see you again. We met a few years back at Cannes, didn't we?
We did indeed.
We did, great. So let's start by positioning you and Enfuse. Tell us very briefly about what the company does, where and for whom, and what your mission, your personal mission is since you've been on board since 2022.
Perfect. Well, Enfuse is what's known as an issuer processor. Now, that might not mean that much to your listeners, so maybe let me explain a little bit better what that means. So we're a provider in the payment space, and we provide the key services required for companies to launch their own payment card programs. Now, be that a debit card, a credit card, or maybe even unique use cases like employee benefit cards, things that provide different capabilities and features. And basically, so if you hold a payment card, be that from your bank or your fleet provider or even your employee benefits at work, it could very well be a possibility that Enfuse is the company behind that, powering that card and making sure that you get a card, be that physical or virtual. And that, when you use that card, your money gets to where it needs to be.
So one of those classic B2B companies that makes the modern world work that we might never see.
Absolutely, behind the scenes, making the modern world work and making payments flow. And we all know payments, power so many elements of our lives. So we're really excited to be able to have quite an impact, even if it's behind the scenes. And maybe for a little more context, we were born in the Nordics, so we are sort of from a heritage point of view a Nordic company. And we are expanding quite rapidly with a primary focus on Europe at the moment. And we've seen some really exciting growth there into way beyond the Nordics at this point in time. Exciting to be on board and fueling the positioning of the business and taking it to our core target audiences as the CMO there.
Fantastic, great stuff. And you've been on board since 2022.
Yeah, I joined in 2022, and really with a vision and mission to take what's for something that feels like a little bit of a utility in lots of ways. Really behind the scenes, quite an exciting business with a really unique personality. I kind of got won over in the hiring process and was excited to then take the remit on board to how do we bring this to life? How do we actually get the behind the scenes in front of the scenes and get people engaged?
Well, that sounds like it's a very good cue to what we're going to talk about in a moment. So, Vanessa, when most B2B FinTech companies are focusing on digital experiences, what made you decide to invest in a physical island experience?
Well, I think the first thing to say there is that we didn't decide not to deploy digital, right? We just realized it's not the only lever that we have available and that we can pull. I think a lot of B2B runs on a on a pretty baseline playbook. A lot of that is based around digital, and I think there's a bit of an over-reliance on that. I think sadly, B2B isn't always known for pushing the boat and testing things beyond what it's seen to be the kind of proven model. So, of course, we deploy digital. It's a big chunk of what we do in terms of really targeting very specific segments, getting our broader kind of educational campaigns about our core propositions out there. So it's not an either or. But we operate in an enterprise-focused environment. And really at the foundation of what we do is that relationship with the customer and a really high level of trust, right? If you're running a payment card program, you need to have a high level of trust that your provider is going to uphold the service levels, that card is going to be working, that your customers will be happy with what they perceive to be your brand experience, not our brand experience. So there's a high level of trust that's required from that perspective. And we really found that beyond the tech and beyond all of the technical things that we articulate around why our platform is best in class, why our solutions and feature functionalities are right for everyone's use case, people are buying also into the experience with us as a company. And being able to kind of elaborate and evolve that narrative, we've really started tapping into unique brand activations that give us more opportunity to communicate what we call that Enfuse feeling. And, tell our clients, bring to life what our clients actually tell us they really appreciate about working with the business. So that's where some of the brand activation thinking came in. We've been pursuing that for a couple of years, and the island is sort of the latest iteration in that process and the next step.
Okay, and so I guess what I'm understanding from this is like a hierarchy, isn't it? Right, digital is a so it's a hygiene factor, kind of diminishes it, but you've got to be doing digital. So this is about a more immersive experience for specific occasions and customers at certain phases in their journey, that kind of thing. Would that be right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it flows into a few different elements of our strategy. I mean, obviously we are using it for a bit of a wow effect. Let's be honest about it. Like, you took a double take on the press release when we launched this thing. People took a bit of a double take and went, "What on earth are you guys doing?" Instant awareness, piece entrance, instant interest, right? But of course, it's part of a bigger customer journey, and it's a particular touch point as part of what we're trying to articulate. And I think the key thing with this is it's something that's very authentic to the business. It's not just a gimmick we've come up with, and yes, absolutely, it plays way more in its sort of the moment it truly comes to life. It plays much more into that sort of ABM, strategic account development part of the playbook than maybe your upper funnel.
So, and because you mentioned that you're trying to create that infused feeling of calmness and confidence. How does that physical experience translate into deeper trust? I guess, is it just spending time with people? Is it as simple as that?
Look, at its essence, at its core, yes, right? For high levels of trust to be there, you have to have a relationship. You have to really buy into what you are jointly pursuing as a mission to achieve. And we always talk about, when our customer wins, we win. So being in it together and kind of those programs that we see have the biggest impact and are the most innovative are where we are ideating and kind of developing alongside our customers. And for that, spending time is critical, and being in an environment that's inspiring and fuels that out-of-the-box thinking is important as well. So that's part of where this came from. But I think, again, part of the bigger part of how do we activate the brand and how do we create moments that support the narrative. A lot of what we've done there is really maybe take a leaf out of the B2C book, right? How do we address the subliminal? So some of what we do is quite subliminal and will try and kind of, get to your senses, and maybe more so the senses than the rational decision-making that we always assume is purely what drives B2B decision-making. And we've done some what you would probably call quite quirky things. We do believe that creating memorable moments when you interact with us and talk to us about our solutions and tech, which are awesome and that we do spend a lot of time and effort articulating. But if you are doing that while you are having the most joyous moment you've had at the event or exhibition that you're attending, be that with really quirky nitrogen frozen ice cream that has the whole stand disappear in some fog, or we had 2 years ago a multi-sensory room to give you some reprieve, and again this notion of calm and we take care of you at the stand. That's where we really kind of try and play maybe your kind of typical baked goods in the supermarket moment to appeal to your senses and create that positive brand association underneath the surface. So that's the more subliminal part. But I think we also do some stuff which is a little bit more out there. I think one of the big things again that drives us with things like the activations I just mentioned and the island is what we talk about as creating big brand energy. I mean, Enfuse is we're growing, we're a really exciting business, but we have so much yet to achieve to kind of get to the size business that we want to be. And one of the things that we've really found is, we're an ambitious team, both at business and at marketing level. We want to be up there with the best of them in terms of being creative and pushing the boat out and doing everything we can to kind of get what drives the business and what makes us great for our clients across. But creating this big brand energy is also about influencing perception with our buyers. I mean, we have literally had people come up to us when we relaunched the brand and with how we turned up, and they said, we always perceived you guys to be quite a small player, but you're clearly, big player in your space. And isn't that funny that it's purely about how you rock up that kind of really starts influencing that perception? So we do leverage and play with that, and that's partly about what the Enfuse feeling is about. And bringing that to life gives us a lot of joy, and also the people who interact with it.
It's fascinating. So many aspects that are fascinating. I mean, it's the rational emotional thing is interesting. I mean, we all more comfortable as B2B marketers talking about emotion, feelings, but no, I don't know another brand that's actually explicitly talked about the way they're trying to make you feel. So they've almost kind of jumped the shark, or whatever the expression is, or opened the fourth wall, or whatever it is. It's a really its statement of confidence is it's very fascinating. We're going to dig into a lot of the practicalities of this because okay, you have an island, you want people to experience things, but there's lots to get to about actually how that works in reality. So I think the first thing we've got to talk about up front is anti-bribery regulations. Right, they are strict for different to degrees, different organisations. I don't know how they vary between different countries, but certainly in the UK there are a lot of senior individuals who have to be very careful about what they accept. So how do you navigate that between creating an exceptional experience and maintaining ethical business practices, or even the perception of ethical business practices?
Absolutely. And look, it's a big point, and I'm really glad that you've raised it. I mean, I think first and foremost, we operate in a really highly regulated environment, right? We're licensed business ourselves, both in the UK and Europe, under the FCA. So, of course, it's something that we've kind of spent time thinking about. And, all of the visits to the island are governed by what you would expect, anti-bribery and corruption policies, gift and entertainment procedures. We work really closely with our compliance department to kind of really make sure that we've got our arms around this and that it's being done in an ethical way. And that integrity part, again, is a really big part of who we are, and we're really, really proud to be a compliance-first organisation. I think the reason why the island is such a good fit, and I mentioned authenticity earlier on in the conversation, is that it's really quite meaningful to us in terms of location. What we're not doing is we're not flying people off to some Caribbean island in the middle of nowhere for just a jolly, right? I mean, we have the island is in the Ireland archipelago between Finland and Sweden. It is where 4 out of our 5 founders are actually from and actually live. We actually do have an office in Mariehamn, which is the capital of the group of islands. And actually, our island, as it now stands, is only about a 30-minute cab ride away from where we're based and where a lot of the Enfuse story actually originated and happened. So it's a location that has true meaning for us and is very kind of close to our roots. So I think that's where the authenticity piece comes from. And also, no one raised an eyebrow before if we had clients and we invited them for workshops to our Mariaham office. This isn't that much further away. And what we do make sure is that when we invite to the island, it has a purpose, there is an agenda. We're not just there to have a jolly good laugh. Of course, part of that is spending time together and developing the relationship. But, there is still a purpose to kind of how we go about that. So, I think that's sort of part of it. And, I guess the same question would go, anyone else who's doing account-based stuff and is doing hospitality, I think when you contextualize it, it might be sounding slightly more wild, but it probably isn't that different to other people leveraging hospitality packages into some of their ABM accounts as well.
Without wishing to sound cynical about this, if you can accentuate an invitation, the business benefits, business aspects of the visit, then and downplay the more social or experiential ones, then that would suggest. I mean, I imagine that would get around a lot of the objections, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, like I think if we were saying, look, do you know what? Bring your mates, bring your family, spend a weekend, enjoy the island. That's a very different. That wouldn't be ethical. That wouldn't be what we'd be looking to do. But again, I think I'd be really keen to explore in a little bit more detail in a moment. The kind of people we look to bring to the island or already have brought to the island, and how we're using it. And I think that gives a flavor for, this is really about business conversations or, thought leadership conversations and leveraging it into that space with business purpose. And, again, I mean, lots of companies have experience centers. It's our half an hour away experience center from our main office is probably another way to look at it.
Okay, well, let's do that. It's exactly that. Let's talk about what it actually looks like and feels like. You're turning brand affinity into business outcomes and accelerating deal velocity, which sounds like all very familiar terms for B2B marketers. So walk us through an island experience and how you actually kind of utilize that to demonstrate measurable business results, and incorporating both that, perhaps those business experiences that we might all recognize with perhaps the more sensory ones you talked about.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, look, a key use case for the island would be, one of our strategic accounts that we are already working with, but we know we really want to be expanding. We know it's got heaps of potential to expand into different use cases, possibly broader use cases within the group, and bringing people there to really have a great forum and environment to establish what's the current position and to spend some time thinking big together, right? Again, things that we would have done in the past, possibly in a slightly different environment. And again, even before the island, we would have still looked for a great environment that would have been conducive to creative thinking around those things. So, really kind of being there and using the island which has a cabin, which we have kitted out to be a really great meeting room with great facilitation points and interactive elements to really kind of explore, how do we jointly envision the future? Where else can we see opportunity for development? How else can we leverage our platform and our technology to help you kind of grow and realize your vision? And, in an itinerary there would be very similar. Client arrives like they would coming to see their provider. There would be a pickup. We would go across onto the island. And, in the island, of course, has an element of wow to it simply because it's an incredibly beautiful setting up there. It is very pure nature. I mean, our founders, again, are very lucky to have grown up and live where they are. But like I said, it's very authentically Enfuse. They would arrive on the island. There would be a workshop agenda throughout the day to explore that. And then, of course, that would be rounded off with then being able to explore the island in a little bit more detail and use some of the facilities, which, again, are quintessentially Finnish and include things like a sauna. I think another element that Enfuse has gotten quite used to, are famous for. We tend to have our podcast sauna studio, and we're quite well known for rocking up with a sauna anywhere that you will let us. So it's a natural extension, and for those who feel comfortable doing so, that would also be something that's there to kind of close the day out on and spend some time together, maybe in a more social setting to build relationships and kind of keep the conversation going beyond the workshop.
I guess you can't, as a non-Finn is probably, or a non-Scandinavian, it's hard to really appreciate the deeply cultural aspects of the sauna, as I understand it. So it all ties up.
Absolutely, yes. And then, I mean, the other use cases for this that we're working on, or we're already exploring, are, how do we bring thought leaders together? How do we use the island for broader business industry conversations, not just with clients, but how do we use it as a great platform for getting thinking around the future of the industry and where the journey should be heading? Again, a lot of compliance topics that we're very passionate about. So how do we get the right people together for a constructive and deep conversation? And then last but not least, this is also about our people, our Enfuses. So, it's been a great destination already to take our teams, and even when they're not with a client, have them explore and spend some deep dive thinking time on things like our product team was there last week. They had their offsite. They kind of used the island to really connect as a team and dive into what's next beyond the current roadmap as it stands. We also offer it to our people. They can enter a draw every year to kind of actually be able to access it for some time with friends and family. So it's a nice little benefit. A lot of Scandinavian companies do this. And our Enfuse of the year also got to go. Actually, he was our first test case for the island to make sure he got to spend some time, then also give us some feedback. So, it's also an element of talent acquisition and standing out as an employer with something that's a little unusual in it.
That sounds great. There's multiple use cases, not just in the actual customer engagement, but also within the wider business as well.
Not just all purely commercial, but it has multiple use cases, which, yeah.
Very powerful. I think it's worth just having some practicalities around this. So just to recap slightly, it's one island within an archipelago, which is midway between, I looked at it on the map, midway between Sweden and Finland.
Correct.
And how you get there, you kind of get a ferry, or you fly to the capital, or how?
To the capital, you'll fly.
Right.
Either from Helsinki or Stockholm. And then, there's a pickup. You go to Little Harbour, then it's a 2-minute boat ride from the Little Harbour onto the island. And anyway, you go from there.
And then in terms of its size, I mean, I guess it's, we're not talking like Greenland here, presumably. We're talking about something a bit
No,
more.
not at all.
A little bit more.
Think more, you can probably walk around it in 5 to 7 minutes.
Okay. And similarly, it's not got, it's not hugely developed. There's literally just one hut on the island. Is that correct?
Two. So you've got the main kind of cabin, which is the meeting space. And then you've got the sauna house, which has, as the name would tell, the sauna in it.
Okay. Yeah, sounds great. Okay, so I mean, in terms of the island's invitation only. In terms of customers, and you talked about the internal use cases as well, and the thought leadership, which is very interesting to me as well. But I guess you've got to, in terms of your selection criteria, how do you work out who you can invite and who you can't? Is it really those key accounts that you're looking at?
I mean, as a first step, it would be sitting down with our commercial team to say, look, what are the accounts that we feel we want to lean into to that extent and really kind of take the relationship to the next level and do that joint thinking on. So that forms the first list. And then, of course, there are, again, clients, we're always mindful of everyone's policies internally and what they do have to adhere to. We also want to be, respectful of that. We've got our own policies that we obviously adhere to, but then also, having an honest conversation of how that would sit with any internal policies on the client side to make sure that there are no clashes in any kind of way.
Okay. All right. And you mentioned earlier on that you're kind of you're seeing this as more kind of taking a leaf out of B2C marketing book than B2B. I mean, I don't know of a precedent for this particularly. There are, come to my nice offices is one thing, but come to my nice island is definitely something new. How do you think this positions you differently as a brand within what's quite a crowded, and quite a highly competitive fintech space?
It is, but I think it is also a very, just with a marketer's perspective, relatively flat fintech space with very homogenous messaging, actually very homogenous branding out there. And I think what we really felt, again, like I said, when I first interviewed for the business, you very quickly got a sense for what's underneath the surface. There's a lot of really great energy and drive, and it it is quite quirky. It's hugely passionate as a business. So, what we really made a mission for us as a team is how can we make the brand, our storytelling, how we bring things to life as awesome as what's underneath the surface. That's what we were talking to the CEOs about. That's what they were really keen to do. And we talked about how do we bring it to life? How do we bring to life the elements of our Nordicness and Nordic heritage, which we are extremely proud of, and also those values that come with that really have informed how we've evolved as a business, and those are some of the key elements that our clients really, really appreciate about the business as well. So how do we both overtly and subliminally get those cues in, articulate them, bring them to life? And we've done that throughout how the brand has been developed. We used a lot of elements out of the Northern Lights and a lot of kind of more Nordic flavored storytelling elements. But, we were really keen to position it also as we're born in the Nordics, but we're there for the world. And we're bringing those values to customers far and wide to really bring their vision for their payment card program to life. So, there are moments like the island where we get a little bit more quirky and really dial that up. And then there's other elements where it's more based on the actual solutions and the tech, where it's probably more subliminal.
So if you look at this kind of the context of me as a journalist getting this as a press release, it looks, I mean, if you don't mind me saying, it could potentially look a bit bonkers, right? If any other brand had bought an island somewhere, you go, what on earth? What the hell? How did that come from? But you explain it in terms of the context of the organization, context of the founders, and context of what you're trying to achieve. It's a very clear link. Is it? Did it make it so obvious that you were kind of, when you suggested this, you were kind of pushing an open door with the founders, or was it something you had to sell quite hard?
I didn't have to sell it hard at all. It started, in all honesty, as a flippant comment. I do like coming up with the occasional kind of, might be slightly bonkers, but what? And, and that was a conversation with the founders and the CEOs. And, and I said, well, why don't we have an island? This is so authentically us. Like, this is our home. This is where we come from. And, our CEOs went, yeah, like, why don't we? This would be a great way of kind of extending the feeling of where we're from and where our heritage is from. So no, I mean, I was able to push it an open door. I guess that's also the benefit of, a founder-led business with still relatively flat hierarchies. You can kind of have these mad moments together and then kind of see, where they take you. I think even it was a conversation within the management team, and I think even some of the management team members were kind of going, yeah, that's a bit mad, but it'll never happen. And that's the typical challenge you should never lay at the Enfuse marketing team's door, because that's exactly the kind of thing that the team will pick up and find a way of making happen. So, what started as a crazy flippant comment is something that under a year later is a reality, and we've had our first Enfuses go, and we've got our first client booked in 2 weeks' time to experience the island as well. So, yeah.
And so when you positioned it, is it first and foremost a brand exercise, or is it first and foremost an account-based exercise?
It started, that first trigger was a brand thought. It was just, if we the typical thing, if your brand was a car, what would it be? And then we were kind of going, well, because we were starting to talk about Enfuse as a destination, the place you come to solve your complex use cases. So the thought was, well, what if it was an actual destination? And, what would it look like? What would it feel like? What would you experience when you get there? So that's kind of how the conversation started. And then we kind of went, well, wouldn't that be the perfect place to immerse our clients even further in our world and what's coming next? And that's how the conversation evolved.
So it's your early days in this journey, and it's fascinating to check in with you in the next few months, see how it's going. But there's a lot of discussion about authenticity in B2B marketing. There's a danger that this could be seen as quite gimmicky. How are you going to stop it from feeling gimmicky, or from the kind of perspective of those experiencing it?
Look, I think, again, if it was some random place in the middle of nowhere that had no relationship with the business, it would definitely fall more into the gimmicky bracket. Again, I think we've really tried to use it as a platform to articulate some of our heritage, and really curate the experience to have a lot of relevance to where we've come from and the values we hold dear. So both from an environmental perspective, and also engagement of the local community. So I'm incredibly lucky that my regional marketing director and events rockstar Linda actually lives in Mariehamn in the island group, and you know, she's been able to really work with local artists, with local artisan providers to really curate every little detail of the island experience. And again, one of the things that we've made a mission for us as a marketing team is we want every single touch point that you have with the brand to be of the same quality and standard and attention to detail as how it feels to work with us and our tech when you actually implement your program. So we take a huge amount of pride in really curating the little elements to then feel a very natural experience. Right down to Linda sourcing local soaps that have been created for the island experience, and all those tiny little details that articulate that attention to detail is something that happens right across the business and is ingrained in our DNA, not just in our tech.
Okay, so key question in B2B marketing, how are you going to measure this?
Well, look, you know, the proof in the pudding for me will be a couple of items. One, are we truly seeing the accelerated traction that we want to see within the accounts that we are taking, and where we are spending and investing the time in imagining what's next? And you know, time will tell. That will be something we'll be keeping a close eye on. The second thing is then obviously when we use the island for content creation and potential thought leadership, you know, how does that content perform when it is wrapped in what is another layer, and you know, how does that compare to how we've worked previously? And then obviously, last but not least, we said a big element of this is also our people. You know, does it turn up in our internal employee satisfaction survey? Is it something that people note positively as part of their branded experience within the company? And you know, again, happy employees tend to make for happy customers, and that's a key element that we want to bring to life as well.
Absolutely, that sounds. I'm sure there's a huge leverage there. So, what was the? Actually, I'm just going to move on and ask you a different question. So I'll pause there for a second. So, do you see this type of experiential marketing becoming potentially more common in B2B, or do you think it's going to be something that's quite limited to people who've got an angle they can deploy on it? Do you think it's replicable?
I think the key thing is, like, does everyone need to go and get an island? No. I mean, you know, be daft, and we'd have a lot of occupied islands, which would probably also be slightly awkward. But I think, you know, I think everyone in B2B should challenge themselves to become smarter and bolder in thinking brand. I do think that's something that, as a notion, I would encourage everyone to do. I mean, we've really kind of flipped the book in the last 3 years, and we've really started with thinking brand and what we want to get across first, and, you know, really driving that brand into demand journey with a big emphasis on brand and storytelling and subliminal experiential storytelling. And, you know, we've seen a lot of traction on the back of it, and it's really changed the way how Enfuse is perceived, and the feedback we get has been fantastic. And you can see it in the journey that we've taken from a provider that's been very SMB focused to really going into that enterprise market and starting to win the clients we believe we were born to serve and that we want to work with. So would I encourage everyone to think beyond the normal playbook and maybe be a bit bolder and creative in thinking of what moment is authentic to us as a business, and how can I bring that to life? I think that's a great piece of homework for us all to take away.
Yeah, I think so. It feels like the lesson from this is leaning to your brand and corporate heritage, and think immersive, right? Because, you know, not, as you say, islands are, as I understand it, islands in the kind of Nordic region there are lots of them.
Yeah, but we don't want that many neighbours.
Well,
So,
no,
you know.
exactly. No, what I'm saying is that, as you say, if you're in the UK or in Germany, it's less of an option. So you've got to find your version of this that's relevant. But if you can take people into a place where they're feeling something through where they are and how you're talking to them and how they recognise the brand, that feels like an opportunity.
Absolutely.
Okay, fantastic. Well, I mean, once you've obviously you're at early days with this, do you have any views about how you might seek to develop it in future in terms of that complementing that physical experience with perhaps in great, engaging it and connecting out to your more digital stuff, which, as you say, is more is the kind of bread and butter of what you're doing, I expect.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, like I said, it was partly born out of this notion of seeing Enfuse as a destination and a place that you come to as a client to, not just a solution, but the world you enter to kind of realize your payment card dreams, whatever those might look like. So we are actually using the island as a anchor point of a broader destination Enfuse campaign, which will come to life in different forms, both in a digital and also physical way. And actually, we've been on that journey already. So the island launched at Money 2020, which is our biggest kind of event of the year. But the whole stand theme was also very much destination Enfuse and kind of enter our world and enter that Enfuse feeling. So this is an element of a broader campaign, not just the standalone.
Well, Vanessa, it's fantastic. It's fascinating and really, really, really unusual. I'm really excited to hear about how it develops. So please, stay in touch and tell us all about that.
Yeah, I can't wait to come back and report back. And, I'm obviously hoping I don't have to eat my words. We really do believe that this is is going to be a great addition into the mix. And as I said, the feedback so far has been really exciting. But yeah, I'll be excited to come back and talk maybe more about immersive brand experience as a whole, and this being an example of it.
Sounds good to me. Well, thanks so much for your time today. Really appreciate you being my guest on the podcast today.
Pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, I hope you've enjoyed this show, this episode rather. And if you've liked it, please do subscribe. Please do give us a like, give us a comment, let us know what you think. And remember, there's lots more content like this with amazing stories from B2B marketers who are pushing the boundaries of how to engage trust and influence marketers or buyers rather. So anyway, in the meantime, that's all from me today. Thanks so much for listening. I hope you can tune in again very, very soon. Thank you.